All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. So first off, I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. We got a lot of great, fantastic content for you. So our topic today is 4 important lessons for MSPs from my worst customer incidents. My name is Andy Syrewicze, Technical Evangelist with Altaro Software, and I'm joined today by John High from the Trivalent Group. How's it going, John?
Good, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Hey, not a problem. Appreciate you coming today and taking the time to talk to us about this awesome content. So really appreciate it.
Sure.
So the first thing I want to do is I just kind of want to talk about our agenda for the day. So if you could advance the slide there, John. Thank you, sir. So we've got a lot of great content here for you, and John is going to be taking through the bulk of today's slides. So John's going to be talking about what/who was a bad customer. Going to talk about various lessons that he's learned over the years and having to deal with tough situations with tough customers. And then finally at the end we're going to kind of do a summary. We're going to wrap things up and we're going to do a Q&A. Now one thing I always like to mention about the Q&A is feel free to ask your questions as we go through the content today. If we have a chance to kind of stop in the middle and address a question that's relevant to the section that John's talking about, we'll definitely do that if we can. Otherwise, we'll handle all the questions at the end of the webinar. Now, another thing I like to mention about the Q&A, if for some reason we don't have time to get through all the questions, we always do a follow-up blog post that contains a copy of the webinar and a list of the questions as well. So be sure to be on the lookout for that if you ask a question and it doesn't get answered. So let's get into some introductions here next of who I am, who John is, and the various companies that we work for. So again, my name is Andy Syrewicze. I'm just kind of quarterbacking today's webinar here. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a VMware vExpert, and again, a technical evangelist for Altaro Software. I've been doing this for 14, 15 some years. And my main focuses have always been in virtualization, cloud services, and the Microsoft server stack. I'm very active on Twitter. If you have follow-up questions or you just want to follow me for the various bits of technical information I send out there on occasion, my Twitter handle's right there. My apologies for making you spell my last name. Not sure what I was thinking there, but additionally, Altaro has some great blogs out there. Altaro.com/hyper-v, Altaro.com/VMware for those platforms respectively. And I've got a slide later in the show today talking about our new MSP blog. So we recently launched that. John actually has an article out there, and I will be giving you the URL for that a little bit later in the presentation. So a little bit of information about the company I work for. Again, the sponsor of today's webinar, Altaro Software. We're a fast-growing developer of fantastic, easy-to-use backup software designed for SMBs and the mid-market businesses and MSPs that are operating in those spaces as well. So worldwide, we've got 30,000 plus customers, 6,000 plus partners and MSPs, and that flagship product is Altaro VM Backup. If you're interested in a little bit more information about that, you can go to altaro.com/VM-backup for more information. With that, John, I'll hand it over to you. You can do your introduction and take us through your stuff for the day.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Well, this will be the hardest slide of the entire webinar, talking about myself. So good morning for me, good day for the rest of you. My name is John High. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Trivalent Group, which is a long-standing IT solutions provider for the last 15 years plus MSP. Myself, I have nearly 30 years of experience in the industry in various disciplines. These days, as a COO, main focus is operational excellence. I do a lot of cybersecurity consulting and speaking engagements, refining our customer experience, setting some strategy, and visioning the organization. So you can see the URL for our website there. And just to be clear, I obviously borrowed Andy's slide. I am not a Microsoft MVP nor a VMware expert. If you do have a Novell 311 question from 1992, I'm your man. A little bit about Trivalent Group. We have roots dating back to 1971. I like to make the joke that in IT, it's kind of like measured in dog years, right? So if you've been in business for 40, 50 years in IT, it's kind of like having been in manufacturing for 150, 200 years. So dating back to 1971, you might be asking, well, what was that? Well, that was typewriters and calculators and adding machines and going into the first PCs and stuff like that. I wasn't there then, but that's where our roots go. More than 700 clients served and billed in 2016. In full disclosure, they're not all managed services clients, but many. And we're consistently named a top provider in our area. So we're in the state of Michigan. We serve the state of Michigan, and we routinely get recognized as a top MSP by CRN, MSP Mentor, several years running as a top 100 MSP in the world. At a local level, the West Michigan 101 Best and Brightest Companies to Work For, Torch Award for Ethics, and Economic Bright Spot in our area. So I come in every day and I see lots and lots of things that could be improved or fixed or added to make us better. But that all said, it's nice to have some recognition as well. So let's start off with the baseline. Who are bad customers? And I kind of gave us some situations or some personas, if you will, as to who they are. So let's start on the left there. We have Mr. In-House IT. So these are basically situations where that organization, the users there, are almost addicted to the guy or the gal under the roof that can solve their problems in person. And I'll qualify this to say that a lot of times, even if that in-house IT person's not a good one, there's still a bit of a challenge in making that organization a good customer. And I'll maybe elaborate on that a little bit more down the road, but suffice to say that they get used to being able to catch someone at the coffee machine or the desk side support, the nature of just being able to interact on a personal level. In the nature, the leverage of the MSP model, of course, is not face-to-face in all cases. Then you have Mr. Needy, and they're probably really nice people, but the users at this kind of organization are just needy in the support. They're not particularly self-sufficient. They're used to just getting tech support for everything from I can't print to my font changed and all those minor things. And even if they're quick hitters, they're quick fixes for your support team, they count as a transaction. They take cycles. You know, even a 1-minute fix is about a 15 to 25-minute investment of time for your support staff. By the time they ticket it, wrap it up, update everything, do their time, you know, all that kind of stuff. Then you have the little bit more dramatic Mrs. Dumpster Fire. So that's kind of self-explanatory, right? You're going to come into those organizations where things are not only a mess now, but they've been a mess. And it's pretty clear from how things are set up that that's the case. So we'll elaborate and make some additional comments on those as we go along. So why are they so bad? Why are they so bad? They make it very hard to make money, to make them happy, and to make your employees happy. In different ways, these organizations will suck the life out of your ability and your support team to be successful. So again, as I was mentioning, the organization that's addicted to in-house IT, it's very difficult to get that organization to embrace that paradigm of remote support and help desk. I would even go so far as to say, now some of you may have already done this, what we've tried in the past is that we'll take a situation like that and say, you know what, okay, we'll do the managed services, but then we'll send an engineer out there once a week, and you know, just we'll go out there on a Wednesday morning and spend a couple hours and just kind of do that white glove, you know, treatment, get them used to. And what we have found is that simply prolongs the weaning of getting them onto and used to a remote support model. And I'll caveat this too, that we have learned it doesn't matter if you're delivering world-class help desk and remote service or not. All of our metrics can be spot on. We can be fixing 80% of things on the first contact of a call. You know, our resolution times can be stellar. Oftentimes, organizations are just so ingrained in using that in-house person that it's very, very difficult to wean them off of it. So what we've learned is, if you try sending a tech on site on an interval basis, it simply prolongs that process. And the other side effect of that is that they quit, but they use the help desk less. And so what happens then is this poor sap that goes there on a Wednesday morning to do his weekly visit, everyone waits till he's there and then piles up their issues, and then things don't get ticketed. You lose your ability to get metrics on, which location of that company is incurring support, what's the nature of the support, who's using support, all that kind of stuff. So that's difficult. When we come into a prospect where they have in-house IT, we're always a little bit wary. And I do get the question often that, well, a lot of places have in-house IT and they want to maybe shift that model to a managed service provider. So aren't you kind of limiting or discriminating against possible new clients? And they don't all go poorly. So part of that is having a pretty deep philosophical discussion with the ownership level up front, and making them aware of this challenge, that it's going to be a weaning process and it doesn't always go well. And we kind of need to get a feel for how their users are and how that in-house IT person is operated. So a few things to kind of be aware of there. The next point there is you see the needy user base, right? So they're just going to utilize your help desk capacity so much that it's going to be like 1,000 paper cuts. It's just these little hits. And it's just going to make it so difficult to manage ticket volume and manage customer expectations. Your margins, of course, will be strained during these engagements. And so in those cases, we've tried to shift towards an increase in self-sufficiency. You try to give them a little bit of a white glove treatment, maybe with how the account is managed. But you keep some metrics, right? And I don't know that we're going to get into this deeply later on, so I'll mention it now. But as you measure these engagements, one of those measurements should be obviously their utilization of your services, whether that's how many tickets per endpoint you have, or whether it's support time, particular users or locations, how often they're calling. And it's okay to have that business discussion with the leadership of that company that this has to work both ways because you're in the boat together. So I think that part we will elaborate more on later. Then, of course, the dumpster fire, and they're just going to be very difficult to bring into best practices without a heavy intervention up front, a huge investment, and that obviously willingness is not always there, or the ability. So that can be a bit of a quandary because they obviously need you, but they need you too much. So let's elaborate a little bit. And I thought that'd be kind of funny to look at, and this is normally a video, but the video didn't translate well in the webinar. So you have these people that are going to need you all the time, right? I will need your help for just a second. On the weekend, during the birth of your child, while you're on vacation, on Christmas morning, while you're on vacation, which is for your child's wedding, on Christmas morning, which is on a weekend, right? So this is kind of what we're stepping into, and we're doing this on a fixed price per month. So this has to be set up for us to be successful because the meter doesn't turn on whenever they call. So I'll share with you this story, and this is in the dumpster fire category. It's a customer unsuccess story, if you will. So this is why I can share this with you, because I have a lot of scar tissue built up over the years. So we came into a mid-size organization, mid-size for us, where we're at. That's 200, a little bit around 200 employees. And many of these folks work remote as well on a frequent basis. So our engagement there started as an assessment. Come in and look at our IT operation, our infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. We had an initial chat about what managed services was and how that might be able to augment even their internal staff. So ownership brings us in. We're doing the assessment. Our end game, of course, was the managed services, but we get into it about a week or so, and the IT person, the person who's been the architect of this pain, quit. no notice, just bailed. And so here we go. We have an unfinished assessment, so we don't even fully understand what all they have. We can already tell that they're pretty needy, and they're now desperate. They need us, and they no longer have any IT. So I don't think any company, which certainly we didn't, you're not going to walk away from that knowing that there's going to be some rough road in front of you. So we certainly did our best to set expectations. Hey, this is going to be best effort. We still don't know a lot of things. We need to finish our assessment, on and on and on. So we continued to dig into things, and this place was a monument to the absence of best practices. And you can name it. You can see the bullet points there. The stuff was old. They had the little mini hubs and switches hidden under, every other desk that was connecting peripherals. We barely recognized any of the names of the hardware, the manufacturer. Versions behind. Patching was an afterthought. You name it. This was literally a perfect storm of bad stuff. So what do? We jump right into it. They begged us to step in, and so we did. And over the next 6 months, we provided this best effort support that I mentioned. And while completing it, we kind of had to build the bike while we rode it, right? What it did, and some of this was probably unavoidable, but what the side effects of this were was a huge amount of stress on both the client and us, because this IT person that quit, while they were needy, he was keeping it together. So they had a functional norm that they were used to, even though it was a bit of a charade, because this guy was keeping it all together with duct tape, more or less. So with him gone and us literally just kind of stepping into this and ramping up, their environment became what you'd expect it to be, which was a lot less reliable and poor performing and all that kind of stuff. So immediately they're unhappy because their users are unhappy and things are getting worse, not better. The volume of support that they incurred with us was an impact, material impact, such that it consumed so much of our capacity in our help desk and our back-end support that it started to affect our ability to support our other clients. So now we're in a situation where other clients in our base are feeling it. And this is where you get into these dangers of what a bad customer can do. Morale starts to go down within the help desk. They can't feel successful, and for every ticket they close, 5 more come in, and all that kind of stuff. You get into the project work, you're trying to do these upgrades, and you are moving probably a little bit faster than you should. You maybe miss some things. You start getting into unbilled hours. So these are things that start to really deteriorate the decision that you made to move forward in the first place. We try to keep a lot of things out of scope. If any of you are experienced MSPs at this point, you're probably going, well, you shouldn't have put all that stuff in scope. You should keep it outside bill. Well, we certainly did that. There's a bare minimum of things that we put under agreement and kept a lot of things out of scope. But even still, you had very low effective rates. And then you're in this constant push-pull where they're feeling budget constrained now because they're paying way more than they ever dreamed. Certainly not as much as they'll be once they're at a baseline. So it was a tough stretch, a very tough stretch. And I would say that a smaller company, so just to kind of give you some context, we have 85 employees, of which 57 or so are in service delivery in one form or another, help desk engineers, project managers, virtual CIOs, that kind of thing. I think a smaller company would have struggled to be able to hang in there with a client like this. and a smaller company might have been consumed and literally not been able to support their other clients at all, even in a degraded fashion, if they take it on a situation like this. So there's a lot of risk in taking on a dumpster fire of this size and this magnitude. We still have them. I'm glad to say that today that things are much better, but still not really where we want them. And you see the note there, I've got them on a 6 to 12 month clock. And I would advocate to you that as we go through this content and we get to the tail end of it, I think you need to have yourself on an internal clock. If you don't have a client that's trending in the right direction at a rate that you are comfortable with, they're not in partnership with you, both in business and philosophy, then I think you need to question whether they're a good client, and you need to have them on a 6 to 12 month clock. That if they're not where you want them at the end of that time, it's probably time to step back. So a few things that we'll elaborate more on, but this was a tough one. This was a tough one, and I could give you a few more that are just like it, in cases where we held on to a client far too long. But we'll cover that here in more in a minute. So I was asked to give you a few pointers, 4 lessons, if you will, on how to be successful and avoid bad client situations. So lesson number 1, as I was reflecting on this, is I would call it stick to your knitting. Okay, you're going to be continually challenged to go in directions that you maybe don't want to go. It's very difficult to stick with your solution stack in all cases. It's very difficult to stick with only things that you know, right? We're shooting for this predictability. We're shooting for this guaranteed outcomes. Like, I can support you to a certain extent because I know what you have, and I know that version. I have skill depth for it, and I can do all these things. But what happens when that client is a great fit for you in every other regard, but their line of business application is something you have no idea about, or they have a firewall that you don't know? Do you replace it? Do you not? So I like to say stick to your knitting. And so simply over the course of doing business, you're going to get stretched. You're going to get stretched. Ideally, stay in your lane, or as close as you can. I know some MSPs out there that are very rigid with this. They will not blur their edges at all. If you have a piece of equipment that they're not familiar with, then you replace it, or it's no-go. Or replace it and add it to the monthly, amortize it over the agreement. Hardware as a service type of thing, and away you go. Just use your good common sense. Be very discerning about those choices. There can be impacts. You know, the typical engineer, in the way that they're wired, starts to get very nervous when they're brought into situations where there's a piece of equipment or a solution that they don't know. Some engineers, I've met those rare birds that, you know, they like to jump in and learn new things, but I have never met an engineer that likes to learn it in front of a client, or has to be under the pressure of being successful without having some road time to that solution. So understand that there's probably some cascading impact to your choice if you bring on some things that are outside your stack. I'll reinforce this a couple times throughout, but not everyone is a good fit for your services. It's really at times better to walk away, and that feels a little bit against the nature of being in business. And I'm going to guess there's 70-some people in attendance at this time. I could probably cut you in half. Half you would think, yeah, I agree with you, man. Walk away. If they're not a fit, yeah, you're better off just not even trying it. The other half going, hey, look, I'm trying to build my business. I'm not going to build it if I keep walking away, and not every client's going to fit in my tidy little box. So I've got to go out there and find them and mold them into the kind of client I want them to be. And you can find industry experts out there, gurus, if you will, the Gary Pikas and stuff like that, that will give you both paths. Like just get them signed up and then make them right, but get them signed up, or don't touch them, until they're a good fit, and then bring them on. You can find both ways. I would say that your business, your abilities, your capacity, your support depth, your skills. That best. Hopefully, what I'll give you here are some criteria that you can use in your decision making as to whether that client is a good fit for you or not. What I can do is I come down to philosophy, and I come down to what's in place. Philosophy meaning this: we have clients that are small, a dentist office with 5, 7 endpoints, and we have larger clients with hundreds of endpoints. If that dentist values IT and is proactive and understands the importance of it to his practice, he's probably going to be a good client. The equipment will likely reflect his mentality, his philosophy. It'll be relatively current, be well kept, be recognizable vendors, top tier, and that's probably going to be a good fit. And I don't need to worry about him long term because of the way he thinks and the value that he places on IT. Conversely, you can have a manufacturer that by size and scope looks like it'd be a great fit for who we are, but if they neglect IT, if they begrudge technology, if they lag in their decision making, if they are not proactive, then despite the fact that they might fit the profile of who we're looking for, they probably won't be a good fit. And that's kind of what you see in the middle. So I'm throwing out the extremes of sometimes you just come across jerks, okay, and jerks rarely make good clients. We've had the cases where you come across someone and you kind of get this initial impression that, man, they're kind of a jerk. But what do, right? You come up with like, well, maybe they're a good jerk. They're not a jerk. They're just really demanding, and that'll be good for us because that'll make us, iron sharpens iron. That's going to make us better at what we do. Not so much. Not so much. We've tried that approach a few times, and yeah, maybe it's worked out, once or twice. But by and large, you find that relationship never gets really good, and it should. I would advocate that really you should have good relationships with your clients, your points of contact, and your leadership. So I wouldn't fall into that trap of they're just going to make us better. They're going to be hard on us. They're going to make us better. No, they're just going to be hard. Just be hard. So that's a good segue into this next one. And lesson 2, I think, is the notion of this symbiotic relationship that you have with the client. We kind of talk about being in the boat together, and I don't even hide the fact, as it says, I guess the second or third bullet point there. I don't hide the fact from these clients that, I need to position you with best practices. I need to do right by you. I need to make IT simply utilitarian, consistent, predictable for you. In doing so, I want to do that in as little time as possible. I don't hide the fact that if things are going well for both sides, I'm not in your face. Things work, and I just don't have to deal with any problems because you hopefully don't have many problems. And I love you, and I want to come see you, and I'll do proactive visits, and I'll bring you donuts. But I just, let's just kind of keep that arm's length. I say that, of course, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but the idea is this is a business arrangement, and the less time I can spend supporting this arrangement in all appropriateness, the better. So that's okay. So we really kind of phrase this as a partnership. It's a partnership in driving predictability and having the right philosophy and mindset, and not getting, not having the client feel like they're nickeled and dimed for every little thing, and really getting them to feel like we're invested in their organization by the nature of this support model. So we're really trying to drive them to an elimination of reactive type of thinking and certainly a reactive type of IT implementation and support. And then the final thing is, don't be shy. This partnership has to work for both parties. I had a case recently with a client, and they've been a client for 6 years, and we were in a renewal for their agreement. And as part of the industry that they're in, they need to put things back out for bid every other cycle. So this was a bid cycle for this renewal, and we won, and they wanted to stay, but they certainly had some things that were shared with them from some competitors. Pricing was a little bit more aggressive, stuff like that. And I shared with them, hey, look, we provide more than those other companies do. So we cost a little bit more, but you're getting a lot more. And that's certainly one of those age-old value proposition type things where you have to try and justify that you cost a little bit more, because we don't endeavor to be the low-cost provider, never will. Not trying to be the highest either, but we're certainly not trying to be in this price war. So we talk about this, and we went back and forth with this client, and ultimately what I agreed to do with this, I dealt with one of the principals there, and I said, look, I'll come down to this, but here's the thing. And I showed numbers. I had reports to prove this. You guys have been incurring support at a higher clip than I think needs to happen for an organization your size and with your complexity. Here's 3 things I'd like to implement over the next few months to hopefully lower that support burden. I think some training should happen, this kind of thing. And if those all come out, then I think the support burden will lower, and I'm comfortable with these rates. I said, if this doesn't happen, I'd like your commitment as a principal of the organization to agree to sit down with me in a year, and we make adjustments so that this is workable for both parties. They were more than happy to do that. So I think it's important to not be shy about having that kind of business discussion. So lesson 3, know when to say when. Sometimes clients start out okay, and then they become bad clients. And this is a moving target, so this is a little more difficult to know. And I like the little phrase on the right there. There's a difference between giving up and knowing when you've had enough. So hopefully you're measuring clients in several ways, right? That should indicate a turn for the worse. There's several measurements that are available. Certainly there's effective rates and on the agreement, tickets per endpoint. There's all kinds of things that you can measure, and maybe we can get some more of those in Q&A. But these should give you indicators that, hey, you know what? They were at this baseline before, and now it's getting worse, and you can trend it over time. You look at what can change, that kind of thing. And I want to go back to one little point back here on symbiosis. We've done in the past, we've gone ahead and done things at our expense that we think will have a significant impact to the support burden. So perhaps it's password self-service. We don't blast that out to everybody, but we have an organization that in all other cases is pretty darn good. We will, get them to implement a password self-service tool. They're happier, and it lowers their support burden. We put some skin in the game, whether we discount or gratis the labor to do it, or whatever that is. But we're willing to stay in that boat with them together, and that's another example of how you can have that symbiotic relationship. Okay. Okay, so back to here. Other things that can make a client become less than stellar. The point of contact can change. I just had this recently. It's a client it's a restaurant management group. They have 4 restaurants, and I had this point of contact who has been with us for or been our point of contact for a few years. I've just got them all trained, right? She knew exactly how to interact with us. She knew the expectations were set. She was a raving fan of our organization, our support, and she's now no longer with the organization. So that makes it difficult. Now you have to ramp up that you got replaced by a person who doesn't know us from anyone. It was not particularly savvy with IT, which is fine, but it creates that whole training cycle all over again. And this person may have a different philosophy on things, and it changes how we deliver support. So that can be a factor. Perhaps the business is sold, or the business buys someone, and all of a sudden things change. We've had several clients that are acquired, and the acquiring company might have their own IT. They have a different set of standards. They're going to apply those. They buy out of the contract, or maybe if they don't, they just want to drive different standards. That can really muddy the waters there. A change in leadership. If you have that leader of that organization and they are of sound mind, they are philosophically aligned with you, they're proactive, strategic, and all of a sudden that changes, that can be a real game changer. Of course, economic downturns, I heard an old saying, when the economy goes down and money gets tight, the first thing people dump, or companies dump, is marketing. And the second thing is they decide that what their IT is doing for them is fine, and they're going to ride it out for extra time. So that will oftentimes put the screws to proper proactive implementation of IT standards. Vendor and app changes. Applications tend to incur a lot of support. So when those change, either by intent or acquisition or major version upgrades or something like that. So these are all some common factors that can really take a great thing and turn it for a different trend. If you can't right the ship on margin, customer sat and employee engagement, within that 6 to 12 months, like I mentioned, then I think you need to look at that client as it's probably not going to happen. So I certainly don't want to advocate. I'm not a hardliner in this respect. If you have a client who's not healthy in the first 6 months, I'm not saying kick them to the curb. I'm saying make sure that you're operating with business sense. You're having those crucial conversations with the ownership group of the client, and you got them on a path to get healthy. And the pace of that prescription getting implemented should be 6 to 12 months. Okay? And I just ask you to trust me here. Bad customer can truly deplete your ability to be successful. Another quick story I'll share. It's super quick. We brought on a client in the healthcare field that was about 1,000 employees, and they were getting poor service. They had a bunch of servers in the cloud. They needed someone to support their users, so help desk support and their applications, a little bit of infrastructure. So of course we're looking at it, we're going, yeah, right, this is a huge opportunity. We will definitely do this. Kind of got dollar signs in our eyes. And what it amounted to was one client, and they were a big client. They were actually 10% of our monthly revenue stream for managed services, not for was consuming just under 40% of our support capacity. So I'll say it again. One client, big as they are, who represented 10% of our monthly revenue stream for managed services, was consuming nearly 40% of our capacity to support. They were killing us. They were killing us. So after a year and a half of suffering through that and it not getting better, enough, we exited. Now they're still a client today, but we provided different scope of services. They brought their help desk in-house, and we do, network support more at the infrastructure level. And they're a great client. But it wasn't working for them either. And thankfully, we had built enough of a relationship that we could have that crucial conversation to know that, hey, this isn't a fit for both parties or either party. And we both walked away at the right time before it got toxic. So be aware, especially with those bigger clients, that they can get you. And the final lesson is to innovate. The basic recipe of monitoring, patching, antivirus, asset management, that stuff's been around for 15 years now. There's oodles of platforms that do that, and someone can decide to start a managed services company with 1, 2, 5 people, and they can get the same tool sets that you have or that I have. So that is definitely closer towards the level of commoditization. So your differentiator has to be your delivery and keeping things new. So I would ask you to consider specializing in maybe a vertical, an industry, or an application platform, a line of business, a market segment, or a particular solution. Find some way to be able to set yourself apart from a lot of the upstart MSPs that are jumping into the game, and those that haven't innovated yet. They're maybe bigger and established, but they haven't innovated. And also, I think that the horizon window that you should continue to try and vision out is 12 to 24 months for what's next. That seems to be a practical window for looking ahead. So the quick summary here, not every prospective customer will be a positive customer. That I can guarantee you. Not every existing customer is guaranteed to remain a good customer. You're entering a partnership, an adult business partnership. Don't shy away from those discussions that make it that. It's okay. It's okay. And if it's not, then you found out early on that that's probably not going to be a good client anyways. So don't be afraid to invest. Like I mentioned the example of the password self-service. I also had a little bullet point on that same slide that I know of a company in a peer network that when they would onboard a new client, they would come in and totally revamp and do from scratch the network printing environment. Reset up a new print server, reorganize all the printers, do it from scratch, because they learned, they scienced it out, that printing was a huge support burden. They felt like they got so many help desk dings on printing, so they said, you know what, we're going to eliminate printing right out of the chute. So what does that do? That makes it longer to get their ROI back and their effective rate to be where they want it to, because that labor incursion up front. So there you look at the term of the agreement to kind of give you some protection there. Don't allow that customer to continually hemorrhage the support needs. You need to get your partner, or customer, but partner, to commit to investing. And then just keep innovating. Constantly research what's next, how you can set yourself apart from the competition. And there's different ways to do it. You can become a specialist in a vertical, a market segment, a certain solution platform, or even a geo. So I think if I've got my timing right, we are right back to 8:44 for me. So I think we're at a time for some questions. Is that right, Andy?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll give people a couple of minutes here to get their questions in. Again, if you've not asked your question yet, be sure to use the questions form in GoToMeeting there, or sorry, GoToWebinar. And first off, thanks, John. That was a lot of great, fantastic information. Good stuff. Really appreciate your insight there.
Sure.
So the first thing I wanted to do to give people time to get their questions in is that I just had a slide or two about Altaro VM Backup and our program for MSPs. So advance the slide, please, John.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. So if you're not familiar with us, we do have a MSP program, that pairs our software with a central cloud, a cloud management console that is multi-tenant. Our MSP program provides unbeatable value. It comes out to roughly $5 US per month, 450 euros per month per VM. So there's no upfront fees, there's no additional costs, no long-term contracts or anything like that. You can start small and cancel anytime. We do a minimum of 10 VMs per month, so that's your initial startup fee. It's really all about our award-winning backup solution. You'll get unrestricted access to all the features that our product has across all your customers with, again, no extra fees. So we do have more information and a 30-day trial available. Just go out to altaro.com/MSP for more information. And again, like I said, we have the MSP model of a monthly subscription program. You get that cloud management console I mentioned, which allows you to monitor and manage all of your backups across your entire customer base from a single pane of glass. Single pane of glass. And you know, again, you get all the features of our Unlimited Plus edition across all your customers. And then I mentioned earlier that in addition to our Hyper-V and VMware blogs, we now have, as of yesterday, a new MSP resource available to you. So we now have a new MSP blog that we're calling the Altaro MSP Dojo. That is now live. It contains a lot of great information already. You know, it's going to contain written content. Eventually, we'll have video content on there. And, you know, things like blogs, ebooks, more webinars like this one, and community. Ultimately, we want there to be a great sense of community based around this site, because we found that MSPs especially, they really benefit and really like that whole mind share, you know, trading ideas, you know, trying to help each other out in their respective fields. So if you're interested in more information on that, you can go to altaro.com/MSP-dojo. And that will get you to that website. Additionally, if you just go to altaro.com and go to blogs up at the top, you'll find it there as well. One other thing I want to point out is we do have another MSP focused webinar coming up here. We have one of our support lead, Matthew is his name. He's going to be putting on a webinar on how to use our cloud management console and our MSP platform to, you know, onboard customers so that you can start building a backup as a service business for your MSP. So that'll be coming up here on the 12th of December. If you're interested in signing up, you can go to altaro.com/webinars.php to go ahead and do that. So with that, I think we're on to the Q&A. So I see we've got a couple of questions here already. So the first one is, you know, got a couple of people that got into the room late. Is there going to be a recording available? Yes, there will be a recording. We record all these webinars, and you should get an email, probably next week sometime, that the recording is available and where to find that. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Additionally, we always provide a copy of the slide deck as well if you'd like that for reference. Let's see. So a couple of questions regarding the content that we've got here, John. The first one, you know, you've kind of talked about this throughout the content, but really centers around, you know, let's say I'm an MSP and I'm onboarding a new customer. What are some of the key performance indicators that I need to watch out for that tells me that a bad customer is a bad customer? Maybe it's not necessarily my gut not telling me, but if I want to look at metrics, what do I need to watch out for?
Yeah, good question. So there's a lot of what I'm going to call bedrock metrics that are out there that many have maybe already heard about. I think you can simplify a lot of it. We've over time kind of distilled things down to just a handful. I'll give you the top couple. So one of them is tickets or incidents per node or per endpoint, and there's a lot of different benchmarks that are thrown around there. You know, obviously the less the better. That goes without saying at this point. So mostly you'll find are around 1. A little bit above 1, maybe a little bit below 1. It's going to depend on your pricing, but you want to have as low as possible, and I think the best is like half an incident per endpoint per month, if you will. That makes sure that that's kind of a measure of support noise, right? I think a real simple one that you go for that is really a result of the influence of a lot of other metrics is your effective rate. How much time are you spending against that fixed price agreement per month? Divide that out. If that effective rate is lower than your T&M billable rate, then you have a problem. So the idea of this is leverage, and you want your effective rate to be obviously higher than T&M, otherwise we go back to the service, break, fix, and project business. So we want to try and shoot for the stars there and have a much higher effective rate. And that really is a result of influence of whether it's support, you know, tickets per endpoint or, all kinds of stuff. So those are a couple that I would actually, just to keep it simple, I'd actually have to home in on as you're building your practice to get bigger.
Gotcha. Thanks, John. Additionally, we've got a couple of other questions that have come in here. So the first one that I want to cover here, that group, is about in-house IT guys. How does Trivalent handle in-house IT guys that maybe are more of a rival? They're more negatively impactful to you, the MSP coming in, than a partner.
Yeah, well, they probably think we're there to replace their job, right? So good question, and I think it's the answer is divided based on the situation. So in the case of ownership has brought us in with the likelihood or probability that we're going to replace that in-house IT person, your engagement with them is only temporary, usually while you're going through and doing an assessment and stuff like that. One of the things that we do with our assessments is we don't just look at the IT infrastructure and go, okay, you have this much of whatever and it's this old and you got these best practices that are not followed. We also kind of survey the stakeholders in the organization just to make sure that the view towards IT from leadership, middle management, departmental lines, to make sure there's not another kind of disconnect there. So that gives us a full 360-degree view of the performance of the in-house IT person there. Unfortunately, it sounds a little bit harsh, but we know that sometimes we come into situations where we're asked to come in and that IT person's not long for the world there. They're going to be gone. So in that case, you get in there, you do your job. So that's one area. So when the IT person, the in-house IT person, is going to remain there, we've had it happen in two situations where they embrace us coming in because their ownership wants them to do advancement, strategic tasks. They don't want them answering the I can't prints and the I can't logins and patching things and stuff like that. So if it's positioned well like that, the in-house IT person will embrace you because you're going to take on the grunt work, the commodity work, the reactive stuff, and you're going to free them up to handle the cooler stuff. Of course, the danger there is that users are so used to tapping the IT person on the shoulder that it's difficult to wean them. That gets back to my earlier point. The other thing that we've done is to kind of round out the answer here is that we have a couple clients where the in-house IT person handles the desktops. That's the lane that they stay in, and we handle all the servers in the network. And it actually works really well. So that's another scenario where maybe there could be some division of labor for the engagement that you have.
All right, that sounds good, John. Got another one here that centers around education clients. So we've got a person in the group that says, their education clients match your dumpster fire analogy. Do you have any tips for conversations to have with the leadership of those organizations to try and turn them into caring about IT within their school system?
Andy, you cut out a little bit on that one. Can you repeat the question for me?
Oh yeah, definitely. Sorry. So we've got a person here that said that their education clients match that dumpster fire analogy of yours. Do you have any tips for conversations that you can have with those types of organizations to get them to care about IT?
Oh boy, great question. I wish I had the magic words for you on that. How do you get someone to care about something? You have to reach them at a level that's meaningful. How do you do that? Do you scare them? Do you there's the old fear, uncertainty, and doubt thing. Do you try and connect with them to make them understand the risk that they're operating within by being an operating dumpster fire? I think it's just going to vary. The whole fear, uncertainty, and doubt and scare tactics, if you will, that works for some organizations because they may not understand, oh man, I'm really at risk here, and that's impactful. It can impact my job, it can impact the community, whatever it is. So that might be one way to do it, if you can kind of quantify and qualify what the risk picture looks like by the way they're operating. As education customers, I mean, I got to believe some of my worst stories, whether it's hacking stories or whatever else, occur at schools. So if they're not up to snuff, especially in areas of network security, there's all kinds of reasons, and it's not just blowing smoke. There's all kinds of reasons that they should be scared, and they should improve their posture. So maybe that's the easiest way to answer it in the time that we have, is just to kind of indicate that try and connect with them at a level that's going to be meaningful.
Sounds good, John. Hey, I think we got time for one more question or two here. So the next one centers around the use of an RMM platform. So we've got a person with a question that says they are tooling up to be able to use an RMM platform for their customers. And the question is, would you recommend absorbing the cost? Because their customers may not be prepared to accept a contract uplift. So I guess the question is, do you pass that cost on to the customer because there'll be better efficiency in service delivery, or do you just kind of eat that? So that's kind of what the question is.
In that area with regards to an RMM tool, I would not eat that cost. And I've eaten costs of other things before, and I get the spirit of the question. I believe, anyways, that hey, if the patching's happening and the monitoring's happening and stuff like that, they're going to be easier to support. That's an area where in the managed services game, them whatever you're doing for them and however you're packaging your services and however you're pricing it, I think that's a cost you should pass on.
Gotcha, John. So I think we have time for one more quick question here. So we've got a question here where it says, we suffer a very common problem when it comes to receiving payments on time from our customers. They want services on time no matter what, but don't care if the payment is issued late or once in 2 months, labeling that times are tough. What would be your recommendation in dealing with those situations?
Oh, that's a great question too. Well, look, there's the hardline response to that of one angle of I assume you're not a nonprofit, so you're in it for business. I guess you need to look at the situation with that company. Are they really on tough times? Are they struggling? Is that struggle going to continue? Like in this, there's different reports you can run that will give you the true behind the kimono view of their economic standing, and maybe you run one of those and just confirm that they're truly in the straits that they say. If the economy is good there and business is good in most of their industries, are they being poorly managed? So I think you need to look at, if you're gonna go hardline, then you say, look, you pay this or we're pulling services. If you're going to go more moderate in your approach and say, well, are they a good customer in other regards? In those other things I talked about, whether they're supporting, are they noisy? How they line up with you philosophically? Are they proactive? If they're a good customer in other regards and you have confidence based on the relationship that you know them, that you think they're going to right the ship and get better, then you may write it out for 6 months or 12 months. But I wouldn't go too much longer than that. And if things are still dragging, I would look to walk away. And if they're not a good customer in those other areas that we've talked about this morning, then I would not keep going down that road.
All right, sounds good. Well, I think that about does it for time for us. So first off, John, I want to say again, thanks for coming and taking the time to share your insights with us today. It's been a lot of fantastic content, so thank you.
Oh, happy to do it. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So, and again, I want to say thanks to everyone who attended, and be sure to check out the follow-up post that we'll be putting up on the Altaro blog about this this webinar. Again, that'll contain a link to the recording, the Q&A, and the PowerShell slide deck. So with that, I will let everybody get back to their day. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you on for another Altaro sponsored webinar. Thanks again.